There are new details emerging in two controversial cases of alleged excessive force by police. We have Tulsa, where a reserve deputy who was 73 years old is now facing manslaughter charges after shooting and killing a man during a chase. Questions are swirling about why this reserve deputy was in on this type of sting in the first place. Then in South Carolina, Walter Scott's passenger speaking out, saying his friend didn't deserve to die when he bolted from the car and was gunned down by Officer Michael Slager. Let's discuss these cases with somebody who knows the job. Retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, also a member of the National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice. Sergeant, thank you for joining us. Let's first deal with the overarching view. We keep being told by people in the law enforcement community, excessive force is down. It's at 1% or less of interactions with citizenry. Things are getting better. But then why do we keep hearing about these cases? Is it just media focus?
Good morning, Chris, and thank you for having me. So let's say this. If you want to know if excessive force is really down, why don't you ask the people that are the victim of excessive force? Because we understand that nothing has changed. And now we're starting to see really with our own eyes, thank God, because of the advent of the cell phone, really to what extent excessive force is being used and to what extent officers will go to minimize, mitigate it, in some cases straight out lie about the excessive force, deadly force that they're using.
All right, so you don't buy it. You say it's more about statistical representation than it is about the reality on the ground. So let's talk about the cases. Tulsa is an unusual one, where you have somebody who seems to have been gifted a deputy position. But when you look at this, tell us where a taser is supposed to be in relationship to a service revolver or, your weapon, and whether this mistake is reasonable to you on any level.
Oh, well, this mistake is absolutely unreasonable on every level. First of all, I don't know if this gentleman is right-handed or left-handed. I think I read something that sounds like he can use either hand depending on what type of a weapon he's using. But what we have here is we have a situation where there's a pack mentality at the end of a very high intensity situation, and it looks like there's several young officers already in there handling Mr. Harris, and you got this guy, Deputy Bates, come running up at the end with the taser, and they've allowed him to play cop once or twice a month, and he wants to get in there and show the youngsters that he can hang. Taser, 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 and then he pulls out his handgun and shoots it. It's unconscionable that he hasn't trained sufficiently to differentiate between a taser and a handgun.
You don't see it as this is a cover story and he actually wanted to use the pistol. He says he's sorry right away once it happens, but you're saying it's about the training and who's allowed to be in this type of dangerous situation.
I don't think it's a cover story. I can't speak to his heart, and so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But what I can tell you is, at 73, he had no business being a part of that as a reserve deputy. When you work a high-profile situation like a takedown, a sting operation, those officers, I'm sure, train extensively, the younger ones together. And so I would imagine, just being a patrol officer and a patrol sergeant, that when the young officers that are working that detail see Bob coming up, or whatever his name is, I can't remember, coming up, they're probably thinking, Jesus, let's just keep him at the back. We'll keep him out of the actual action, if you will, should it happen. But he wanted to insert himself. He wanted to be a part of that. And sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for.
All right, so now we get to the big case that's been making the rounds of South Carolina, North Charleston. There's video that's come out of the officer involved having tased somebody else who is now suing and saying, I should not have been tased. Is this meaningful to you in understanding what happened with Walter Scott, or is this just a different scenario?
Well, it's meaningful in that I said all along that I knew that when we saw Mr. Scott get tasered by Officer Slager, that was not the first time that he had done that. You don't come out and kill somebody the first time around. I knew that he was an overly aggressive officer, and so to hear that in 2013 he pulled a man out of his own home and tased him, and now we hear that he has pulled a man out of a vehicle for what? A broken taillight, because that's his MO, tased him. And listen, this is on video, so it's not like the police chief in that department doesn't know that they have an errant officer on their hand. They have been covering up his misdeeds, but guess what? They weren't able to cover up Mr. Scott. And so now they have to do a punctious pilot and say, we have a situation here, and Officer Slager, you're on your own.
Washing their hands of him as he gets charged with homicide. Well, one thing is for sure, we are seeing that with more video, which raises the issue of body cameras, the more truth of every situation can come into play. Thank you very much, Sergeant Dorsey. Appreciate your perspective on this. We'll have you back on New Day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, this former law enforcement